Welcome to the official podcast of the Indiana High School Baseball Coaches Association. IHSBCA leadership includes Executive Director Brian Abbott, President Jeremy Ritchie, and First VP Kevin Hannon. Follow them online at IHSBCA.org and be sure to give them a follow on Twitter with the handle at IHSBCA. I'm your host, Dan Hill of Baseball Across Indiana, and with that, let's get right to today's episode. Between my guest for today's episode and we collectively have over 900 wins at the collegiate baseball level. Now, there's some small print to that, some fine print. I account for none of those. Of course, my guest is Rich Maloney, the skipper for the Ball State Cardinals. And Coach, I really appreciate you coming on here with me. And I've listened to a lot of the stuff that you've talked about in the past. I'm buying what you're selling, and I don't want to undersell that thank you, because I really like what you stand for, and I love how you apply it with your teams and your greater mission. And so, I mean, it's a privilege to have you on here as we unpack some of those things for our audience with the IHSBCA. It's, high school coaches and younger. That's kind of our target audience that we're thinking about here as we go through today's discussion. I joked about those 900 wins, but in 2022, that was quite a year. Of course, you got your 900th career coaching wins. Now I think you're at 917, 601. I first got to ask you, what's the tie? You have one tie in those 1,500 wins. Who was the tie?
It happened in the first year. I just know that in my very first year of coaching. It's ironic. And I've been coaching now 28 years as a head coach. I haven't seen one since. I think it was a darkness.
917 wins, 600 losses, and one tie. But 2022 was, fifth MAC regular season title. Ryan Peltier, MAC Defensive Player of the Year. Ryan Brown, MAC Freshman Pitcher of the Year. Alex Call had his debut. I think Jameson had his debut this year too. So two alumni with their debuts in the pros. I like this one right here. Blake Beamer, a former assistant, gets the Butler job. I know we're going to talk about that. MAC Coach of the Year for the fourth time. And then one we're going to unpack quite a bit as we talk about ethics and integrity in baseball. You were the recipient of the ABCA Dave Keiltiz Ethics in Coaching Award. And, thinking about him, the first thing I kind of want to talk about is, I know there's you and Dave go back, and there's a lineage there even that ties into your time here at Ball State. Tell me about that mentorship that he's had, and how that's led to where you're at now at Ball State.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it started with my college coach, Fred Decker, who is a great friend of Dave Keiltiz, but yet Central Michigan and Western Michigan were like a smaller version of Michigan, Ohio State. So with that being said, the two men had great respect for each other's programs. And me being raised a Bronco, it's ironic that Dave and I have connected so well over the years. But my respect for, first of all, for Fred Decker as my mentor and second dad, as I would say, really changed my life, because Fred believed in me, gave me the opportunity as a recruited walk-on to be in his great program. And then for me to develop not only as a player, but then a young man, and gained a lot of confidence. So Fred's the one that said to me when I got into coaching, you got to ask yourself this question: do you want to win at all costs? So Fred and his connection with Dave is how my connection with Dave started. So then Dave Keiltiz, though, stands for integrity, high character, just like Coach Decker. And so that's two men who've had influence in my life. And Dave's always been there like Fred, alongside of me as my career has gone on. Dave on a different light, because Dave and I weren't together per se, day to day because I didn't play for Dave. But this tells you the impact that Dave's had on so many of us coaches is we weren't even under his necessary tutelage per se day to day, but yet he's influenced us so much by how he did his business. I had a chance to work with Dave very closely through the ABCA, which he invited me to be get involved at a deeper level than just be a member. And I went through the system with his tutelage and had a lot of great moments with Dave, a lot of moments of encouragement, a lot of moments about career path. And Dave's always been there for me, but I've just had great respect for the person he is and the impact he had on our organization, which affects a lot of people. And that's why I'm so proud of the ABCA, because we're trying to add value to people, as many as we possibly can. We add value to the coaches, which in turn add value to the players. And I look at it as a much bigger impact than just a game of baseball.
Well, and for those of you that aren't familiar, Dave Keiltiz he ran the ABCA for years. And we're gonna unpack this ethics award and even that statement you made as far as win at all cost quite a bit as we move forward. But I do also want to mention, that in appreciation of everything you do, you wear a lot of hats, and one of them is you're currently on the ABCA Board of Directors. You were the president back in 2018. So I think they picked the right person here, and we're going to spend the rest of this show talking about why. I mentioned some of those awards and those accolades from 2022. I know you're a humble guy, and but at some level, as men, as we go through our work in life, and we're trying to work out the kinks of our mission, receiving accolades like this, seeing your guys make it in the bigs, getting the Coach of the Year awards, obviously I said, like I said, you're a humble guy, but at the same time, I think that's got to be a little bit of reassurance that, your work is on the right path of your mission. They're complementing each other. So, I think that's got to be a little bit of assurance, doesn't it?
Well, it's very gratifying, to say the least. First of all, I'm a man of faith, and with that being said, everything starts with my faith and how how I've been grounded and mentored, and so the integrity oozes out of my personal feelings of my belief in doing things the right way, and that's from being surrounded by so many people who just breathed into me. And now, and the reason why I'm a coach is because I had coaches who breathed into me, and they added value to my life, and they changed my life. Yeah. And so because of those wonderful people, and I've had so many of them, it seems like God keeps putting different ones in my life at different times. And fortunately, I've been able to recognize them. In other words, I've been able to see that these are the people you want to be around. So one of my mottos, even integrity in building a program, is surround yourself with good people. I've been very, very blessed because I've been around so many good people all across on different things, from administrators to coaches to colleagues, and they've added value to my life. And the reason why I wanted to coach is so that I could impart whatever I've been able to discern and learn to the young people that I've been given the opportunity to mentor and to love on, and to try to add value, and to try to raise the bar for them. And that's the challenge of us coaches, is try to bring out the best in the people that we're around, and hopefully leave some kind of impact in a positive way.
Well, and you brought up a topic that recently we ran an episode that talked about the brotherhood of baseball coaches, and it was a group of high school coaches in Indiana that they're really good friends, and they hold each other accountable. They challenge each other. And, one of the questions I asked them that I'll bring to you is, what factors of the coaching, or I guess I could even say leadership life of leadership, life of mentorship, what aspects of that life maybe are missing when you don't surround yourself with people who are going to hold you accountable and challenge you and bring things to the table, different perspectives and things like that? Where are coaches vulnerable without
Well,
that
whenever
support?
you're in a leadership position, period, the coaches are the CEOs of their programs. In essence, that's really what it is. And I remember Bill Martin, my athletic director at Michigan, who gave me that great opportunity. He told me, he says, man, I don't know a whole lot about baseball, Rich, but I hired you as my CEO. And so you tell me what you need and I'm going to help you. But he wasn't a big fan of it, but more importantly, he was going to just voice his confidence in me as the leader. And, for all the coaches out there, what you have to remember is you're responsible for the program. You're responsible for the kids in the program. You're responsible for all facets of the program, because no one's going to care about as much as the coach does. And therefore, when you're sitting in that kind of seat, it can kind of be lonely if you don't surround yourself with other people that can help you along the way. And certainly when you talked about the 900 wins and such, the 900 wins really is, which is so beautiful, is the fact that so many people played a role in that. I just had to be the leader of the organization. But the truth of the matter is the players win the games. And all the coaches that I've had the privilege of working with, and they breathed into the players, just like me. I kind of set the tone. And then the rest of these guys have done a marvelous job. So we all played a significant role. So maybe it goes on my record, but the truth of it's on my wall. Like if you've seen all these pictures in my office, it's these kids and the coaches that I worked with that played that role. So anyway, we're the CEOs of our company, and we have great responsibility to lead, but it gets lonely at the top. So if you don't surround yourself with good people, then you can be awfully lonely. And there's times where, as a coach, you're going to run into some situations where, you lost some ball games in a row. No matter how many games you win, you're going to lose a fair share. And you've got to be able to still maintain the same steadiness so you can get through it. Otherwise, if you're all alone on that mountain, man, that's a lot of stress. That's a lot of stress. So you need the help of other people. And what we try to do is just add value to others.
Well, and speaking of CEO and putting that together with, the circle of influence, and I want to quote Ryan Brownlee here, the host of the ABCA podcast, and I quote him a lot. He's, I guess you could say imitation is the greatest form of flattery, but I've got a lot of respect for him. And when he was speaking of the award that you received at the end of the podcast that you did with him, which if you haven't heard that, for those listening to this one, you need to go back to the ABCA podcast and look up the interview that Ryan Brownlee had with Coach Maloney. It's just a fantastic interview. Matter of fact, I told Coach offline here at the beginning that I listened to it 3 times. Mm-hmm. There's so much good stuff. What he said at the end, I think, goes in line with what you're talking about. And when he was talking about the award, he said, "Congratulations to you and your wife on this award." And, speaking with you in the past, that's big to you. That's a component that is part of your staff, the coaching staff. So tell us about that a little bit, and how that dynamic, that family dynamic, especially with your wife, makes this happen.
Well, there's no question. I mean, if I didn't have Kelly by my side, I definitely wouldn't have had the success that I've been able to have in the career, without question. We've done it together. And it's tough for a spouse in this kind of occupation, because you're gone a lot. You're gone a lot. And the schedules have to be dictated based on your schedule, because you're responsible for 36 or 35 or 40 young people. And at any time of the day or night, you can get called, and all of a sudden schedules flip. So having someone who's strong and independent like Kelly is, and who's competitive, and he wants us to be successful, and understands the demands of the profession, is critically important. I always tell the young coaches out there that it's very important that you find, if you're going to go in this career and you want to have a family, then it's very important that you find a significant other that is independent and understands the grind that you're going to have year in and year out in this kind of profession. because marriage in of itself is a challenge for all of us because we're two different people. And so us learning to work together and doing it together is really, really important. And Kelly's been a rock. And I've just been very blessed. So interestingly enough, this is my 32nd year as a coach, period. 4 of them were as an assistant coach under my second dad, Fred Decker. Then, but Kelly and I were married the year before that. So we're going in year 33 right now. We're getting ready to celebrate our 33rd anniversary. And that's a really big deal. And you're right. She doesn't get the accolades that we get when we win championships and such, but deep down, I'm sure she should feel a tremendous sense of gratitude and thankfulness, and feel it from me because we've done it together.
Well, and she was there. So if you've been married 33 years, you said,
Yeah.
she was there during some of the tough years. I know you starting out, you didn't really go full time till you were probably 30.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of those early tough years and, really how, that shaped where you're at today.
Yeah, and I think one of the words we use in our program is dirtbag, and I use it as one of the highest compliments, honestly, in our program. And then we have a dirtbag award. We also we talk about the grind. We're grinders. We just find a way to get it done. We don't care who we play. We feel like we can win any day just because of our mentality. But from that, basically, when we started out in our career, I met Kelly when I was, I think, in year 4 of my minor league career, which lasted 6 years. And so the last 2 years we were married and in the minor leagues together. So we lived a life where you have no money and you get paid 5 or 6 months of the year. And I wasn't a bonus, maybe I was a 13th round pick, but I got signed for $3,000. So that, that doesn't go very far. And so we lived on very basic means. But she allowed me to pursue my dream of being a Major League Baseball player. And I remember the day that I called it a day. Chris Chambliss was my manager, and I was down in, we were actually finishing up a road trip in Huntsville. And the Braves decided to call up. I was a utility player in my 6th year, but I was playing really well. And I think I found my game again, but I was 26 years old. And lo and behold, couple of guys got promoted to middle infielder, so I thought this was going to be my last hurrah. Here's my chance to play every day and see if I can put it all together. And then Chris told me, he goes, Rich, he goes, you're playing great. You're doing great. But he goes, the brass said there's 2 younger guys coming up that I have to play. And I said, Chris, then I got my degree. I've been doing this for a long time now. Then the writing's on the wall. I need to do something else. And I really appreciate your honesty and integrity. Matter of fact, that was a man of integrity right there, Chris Chambliss. So anyway, I packed up my bags. I told Kelly, I said, well, we're on to a new chapter. And so then we go to Western Michigan. Coach Decker opens up the door at Western. Ironically, Paul Snyder, who was his assistant, got the full-time ice arena job to be head of the ice arena because the position only paid $12,000, no benefits. So for the next 4 seasons, 4 years, Kelly and I moved to Kalamazoo, back where we both went to school. She got a job, and she was basically supporting me as I was finishing up another degree to be certified as a high school teacher coach, speech and English. So that if I couldn't get a full-time college job, I would just coach in high school, and we moved back to the Detroit area where we're both from. So make a long story short, paid a lot of dues. So you think about it, 6 years in the minors, making no money, 4 years in as an assistant coach, not being full-time without benefits, making not very much money, and then going full-time to school as well. Got halfway through the masters, got my break to be the Ball State head coach, which again, I got to give a lot of credit to Coach Decker because of the great respect that Pat Quinn, who was the former Ball State coach, had for Coach Decker. I got in the pool of candidates. And therefore, and then when we were then it became divine in the interview process. And it was just one of those where we were supposed to be here. And so Kelly and I moved our family, me, her, and Alex, who's now my assistant, was 6 months old. And we didn't know anybody in Muncie, Indiana. And so here we're like nomads. And then that was the beginning of our next step in this long career.
That's interesting. You said that you were English and lit. I think you said you're the degree. I think that's why a lot of coaches are math or economics teachers, because they learn to stretch that dollar with. But listening to a lot of the stuff and hearing you talk many times, you're a quotable person. I think I've got more of your quotes written down than Lou Holtz. And I want to read some of them and kind of unpack them a little bit. One of them is, be where you're at. And I love this quote. It's, with people's time commitments and everything like that, be where you're at. I'm guessing it's, be present. Tell me about be what you're at. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a huge one, because in the industry, especially with high achievers, of which I was one, meaning I always had dreams. And just like so many of the young coaches who aspire to be at the top of a profession. I remember being at the ABCA in my first ABCA clinic way back when, and lo and behold, I saw those guys on stage and I was enamored. It was like, wow, someday maybe I could be one of those guys. You know what I mean? I really did. So it starts with the dream, but be where you're at is you have to excel right where you're at. So when I was working for Coach Decker, I honestly thought in my mind, I would work under his tutelage and stay at Western Michigan my whole career at that time, and take over whenever he decided that he was going to be finished. That's how much respect I had for Fred. And but while I was there, I wanted to prove that I was worthy. And so I needed to, strap it on and do all the little things that it took to assist him and to help him be successful. And what a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of times we think ahead of ourselves to where our next step would be versus excelling right where we're at. And it's kind of a biblical truth, is just basically, if you do well with the little things, then bigger things get added to you. And I found that to be true in my life. And I found it to be true in so many of the people that I've watched in their careers grow, is they did really well in the little things. And then it's almost like you earned the right to get the next step. But it takes that little things, and some people aren't willing to do all those little things. I mean, I remember, getting there early and then staying late. And I remember putting things away constantly, and then fixing things. And my wife would laugh when I say that, but I remember doing the job in my fourth year at Western where they put me to give me a little bit more money, even though I wasn't full-time. They allowed me to help at the basketball arena, and I'd have to put the baskets to lock them down. And that was a challenge for me because I'm not the most handy man, but nevertheless, I had to do it. You do what you do to survive and to scrap and to claw. And then all of a sudden you do well in that, people hopefully say good things about you and you get another opportunity.
Well, that's right in line with what you were talking about with, the starting out with a $3,000, it's the stair steps of stewardship, I guess you could say. You take them with what you have and move your way up. So that was be where you're at. Another one I absolutely love. And I believe there was a coach that gave you this line, and that is, do what you say you're going to do. Tell me about the lineage of that and what it means.
Yeah, I think this was a really important one for me. I mean, I think my mom and dad raised me that way. Quite frank, because I got to give a shout out to mom and dad. My mom's since passed, but they had just great influence on my life to, raised me and my brothers with great morals and doing the right things. But anyway, one of my administrators actually, who oversaw baseball at Michigan when I first got there, was Mike Stevenson. And one day he, in his way of mentoring, he put these letters in front of my desk, D-Y-D-Y-D W-Y, and then anyway, it basically spelled, did you do what you said you would do? And if you really think about it, if you're going to be a man of integrity, you got to be able to do what your word needs to be your bond. And really, that's all we have in life, really, if you think about it. You got your word. You either have it or you don't. And in this case, Mike just ran that by me. He just says, make sure you give that some thought in everything that you do. And I appreciated that very much. And I say that in pretty much all of the, when I go to speak on anything about integrity or ethics or anything else, I always bring that up, because I think it all starts with there. You got to be able to follow through with what you say.
Well, they're simple statements, but they're profound in meaning,
Mm-hmm.
and I really appreciate them. Another one I think is kind of a phrase that's used a lot in, with ABCA and baseball coaches in general. I think coaching in general, I think it's a life statement, which is leave it better than how you found it. Tell me about that's not just about the dugout. There's more to it than that. Unpack that a little bit for me.
Well, and I think all of us in leadership positions have an opportunity to have impact. And your impact seen, it might be found later, 10 years from now, especially as coaches. Sometimes the kickback in a positive way comes later. You've coached a kid 20 years ago, and then all of a sudden the kid writes you a letter.
Yeah.
And he says, hey man, when you were there, these are the things you taught us, and they stuck with me. And now I'm teaching my team. I mean, I got one from a manager a few years ago. Well, excuse me, not a manager, a player who didn't get to play much on my team, but was part of a couple of our championship teams. And he wrote me this wonderful, wonderful letter, and basically just saying, hey, when you got us up at 5 a.m. for he goes, my wife says, why am I up on the weekends at 5 a.m? He says, you could tell that to Coach Maloney because he got us up there, but the early bird gets the worm, it's another quote. And the fact of the matter is, this young man is now a man and is leading a team. And he says, the principles that you taught us, I'm applying with my team. And, that's super gratifying. I mean, you can't even put a dollar amount on stuff like that. And as coaches, when you've been in it as long as a guy like me has, I've been very blessed that, periodically you receive those, but sometimes you receive them way down the line. So you want to leave it better than you had when you started. So in other words, these young people come into our program, and you hope that you touch as many of them as you possibly can in a positive way, and that years later they realize that that experience that they had was so valuable to them in their lives. And they may not see it right at the time, and many do, but some don't, and some see it later. But leaving it better is, to me, I mean, why are you into coaching? I mean, if you think about coaching, I got into coaching really to mentor. The wins and losses, I love the competition. And trust me, anybody who gets into coaching, of course you want to win. I mean, come on. But at the same token, a win is when you have a letter like that. That's a win. Yeah. That's a great win. That's probably even more than the actual win. It's way more than that. So my perspective on coaching has always been to try to add as much value as I can to as many people as I can. And that comes from, again, the coaches. That's not from me. That's from the coaches that breathed into me, because they added value to me.
And the it part of that, which is, I love you unpack that in so many different vantage points. The it is the player, the program, the every aspect of it. And then, you were talking about the win for you. That brings us to the next statement, but I don't call it a statement. I call it a question. And that is, talking about win at all cost, question mark. I know that's a statement that changed your perspectives on things, I guess I could say. Tell me a little bit about win at all cost.
Well, you see in sport now, especially as the monetary value goes up, like in coaching salaries in all sports, and in particular now baseball's just started to really climb. When I got in, there was no money in the game. You didn't get into it for that. Again, you got into it for mentoring and the competition, the camaraderie that you have in the profession. But this time, now, even in our sport at the college level, I don't know how many guys are making over $1 million, but there's probably 10 or 15 of them at this point. And I'm not exactly sure the exact number, but anyway, the salaries have escalated. When you have salaries escalate, then people don't want to lose those jobs. they're feeling a lot of pressure. So they feel the pressure to win, and the pressure to win becomes magnified. And because of that, decisions that are made might not always be with the same value system that they had earlier in their career when they weren't making that same kind of income. And so until you sit in that person's seat and understand the pressures, it's easier for someone to say on the outside, how could someone do such a thing? But I think you got to be grounded. And I think that's where, for me personally, that's where my faith grounds me, is I look at it as a higher call, meaning the standard that's set is I can't even meet the standard, because the standard that my faith dictates to me is greater than anything else anyone else could. So therefore, with the standard, that bar being high, you just try to do the best that you can, but you do things the right way. And the right way is to make sure that you're trying to treat people that you deal with day to day, players in particular, because that's the people that you're influencing. You try to, treat them with respect, whether they're the last player on the team. Like I would say, when I went to Western Michigan, I honestly think I was the 39th player out of 39 players. I really believe that. And I had to climb my way up that mountain. But you treat that person the same as you would the person who's your first round draft pick.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you can have impact on all these kids. But the temptation is greater when the monetary value comes higher for people to play in gray areas. And I always tell all my assistants, as I mentor them, I just say, hey, we're not going to play in gray areas. You're going to see other people play in gray areas. That means you might see several people doing something out at a showcase where they're in a place where they're not supposed to be, let's just say hypothetically. And we know that we're not going to be in there, even though that isn't like a terrible violation, meaning it's not like some crazy thing. It's just a fact of the matter is you got to ask yourself how you want to do your business. And I just don't want to play in gray areas. And so I think as coaches, and even high school coaches and everybody else, if you win at all costs and you play in gray areas, you're willing to pummel over people to get the W. For me, at the end of the day, we've got a lot of W's. We've been very, very fortunate and blessed. But the truth of the matter is, I don't want to do it. If these guys on the wall, if I had to break down walls and do things bad, and then they didn't think highly of me as an individual, then I didn't do it right. And I can't live with that. Because I always say, one of my big sayings is, you got to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. Because only when you look in the mirror, the truth comes out. Now, so those people that decide to go in an area that they know is not the way they should, they have to look in the mirror. And so deep down in their being, they're not going to feel real good about that.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've tried to be a steady Eddie, in the sense of just try to do the right thing, err on the side of not playing in gray areas, and try my best to treat as many people as I can and add value and add value to as many people as I can.
Let's kind of summarize all those things with the ABCA Code of Ethics, which, you were as I mentioned at the beginning, the Dave Keiltiz Ethics Award winner, one of two people. I believe the other one was who's the other coach's name? I forgot. There was two recipients this year, and you were one of them. The ABCA Code of Ethics. And first of all, I want to say, when the ABCA makes this statement, this is the body that drives coaching in baseball in America. So I think as I read this, the people listening, when ABCA, if this is their code of ethics, I think it's something that we need to listen to. And it states as such, the highest calling, I think we need to, underline that word, the highest calling of a baseball coach is to teach life lessons and model the character traits of honesty, integrity, respect, and personal responsibility. And I held that quote, or that statement, reading that statement off till later, because I knew you were already going to use those words, as we unpack these things. But when you think about honesty, integrity, respect, personal responsibility, and you compare that to win at all cost, where do these things fit in the coaching philosophy and how it's applied in practical application to a program?
Well, first of all, we had a great example in John Wooden.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody talks about John. Look at the impact that John Wooden had on our game and on our coaches throughout the years, because he actually had a simple approach. He wrote the Pyramid of Success, and it's really rather simple. If you really think about it, there's a lot of people that could have written it, but couldn't have never done it and put it the way that Coach Wooden did, because we've experienced it. Because if you followed those traits that man put out there, you can't help but do the right thing, because those things embody what it takes. So I think that standard that the ABCA is calling us coaches to adhere to will, if adhered to the best of our ability, will develop leaders. So I think if you look beyond what that really says, is right now, I'm going to speak from my deep from my heart, is I worry about our leadership in our society today, period. And then where is the next level of leaders going to come from who do it the right way? Because we're not on TV and the media right now, and the things we're seeing, we're not seeing a lot of, we're seeing a lot of questionable integrity, let's just say. I think that's a very fair statement. And so we as coaches have a chance to impact these young people, and we can help develop them as the leaders of tomorrow. And it's the way I look at it now at this time, as a seasoned coach, a coach has been in the industry a long, long time, seen a lot of things. This is really needs to be part of our call, because we're responsible for these kids. And then they're going to go out and they're going to have leadership responsibilities. And in some small way, if we as coaches could impact those kids in a positive way and teach them how you do your business well, some basic principles, just doing the right things, that will carry over, and then they'll add value to other people. And then we'll keep developing leaders, which will make our society a better place. So the calling actually as a coach is, when someone gets in the industry, it's much more than just the game of baseball. And so for the young coaches out there, and this is what I tried to say when I was honored with that award and humbled by it, was that they're going to be carrying the banner for the future, not only of our game, but also, you could say, for our country. Because we have an opportunity as athletics, because we teach them time management. We get them up. Like in my case, I've been getting these kids up 5 a.m. for 30 years now. So you teach them discipline, structure, learn how to work as a great teammate, integrity, because we got all kinds of moments where we can bring up. Matter of fact, just the other day I brought one, and to one of the players that I really liked as a player, like I think is a great player for the LA Chargers, Bosa, defensive lineman. He had a bad moment. We all have bad moments. So this isn't a real knock on him. He had a bad moment. But in that bad moment was a great teaching opportunity, because he got frustrated with some of the calls that were made. And he may have been right. But he lost his composure, and when he lost his composure, it affected the outcome for his team. And it was sad, because he's a great player, great player. But again, these are teachable moments that we got to look through as coaches, at least in my eyes, to teach our guys, how do we do our business, and things are going to happen that aren't going to go our way, and how do we carry ourselves? And these are all great moments. So we got a wonderful platform as coaches to develop the leaders of tomorrow.
And I think that makes it worth it to you more as well. When you talked about a calling, and if we broke that out into the 4 components of the ABCA Code of Ethics: integrity, honesty, respect, personal responsibility. When I think of, and this is I think probably a psychology adage, I don't know, maybe I made it up, but I think that the joy in life comes less from just frivolous fun and more on being able to deliver on those things that others rely on you for, being able to deliver that. And if you look at that age group that you are so influential on, those college age kids, the 18-year-olds to 20-something-year-olds, that's such a pivotal moment in life. They need your honesty. They need integrity. They need respect. They need to be taught personal responsibility. Those are things that they need. Because of the calling, you and your staff and your program are delivering that, and that reciprocates back to you. I think that makes it worth it. Like you were talking about with the letters that people write you years later, that, okay, yeah, all that, when we didn't just teach him how to, hit the corner with a two-seamer, it's so much more. That makes it worth it to you. So I think that I love how that reciprocates and creates that cycle that you got to get started and stick to it.
Well, here's the thing with it, Dan. The truth of the matter is the value that these kids have added to me in my own life, I can't even say.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even say. So they would tell you, and I say this with humility, many of them would say, hey, coach had impact. And I would say to them is that you had impact on me. And for me, that's why we do what we do. So now I've got these, I mean, every time when I get to talk to these kids and see how they're doing, they're not kids anymore, they're men. And when they celebrate their successes, or they tell me how their kids are doing, and it's tremendous joy. Tremendous.
Well,
joy.
I think I see it as a man of faith too. I see it as divine. The letters you receive, the calls you get, that give you that reassurance. I think that is divine encouragement that says, stay the course. And thinking about that as we get close to wrapping things up here, I've got a couple. You think about different approaches to things, and there are obviously a time for everything. You mentioned, no, we're not going to play in the gray. We're not going to, coach in the gray. So I think about, coaching philosophies, and there's always two ways of looking at things. One of them that I love so much, and it's all about balance and prioritizing. And one that I love, and one of the reasons I love baseball so much, is that balance. And I want to list a few different scenarios here of whether it's a balance or it's both, or how do you decide, which one do you prioritize? The first one is humility versus confidence. Baseball is a game of humility, but you got to be confident when you're up to the plate. How does that dynamic, play out as far as your philosophy with your players?
Yeah, well, I think every day as a coach, you gotta exude confidence in your players. So you got to build them up. You got to get them to see a picture for themselves that maybe they can't even see. And you got to be honest about it. But if you really see it, you got to feed it.
Yeah.
And then at the same token, when they have great success, you want to handle success with a grateful heart.
Yeah.
Because anybody who has any success is a byproduct of so many others. Come on. I mean, I don't care who you are. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player ever, in my humble opinion. And I'm a Detroiter, so that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
But with that being said, he would tell you that the bad boy Pistons added value to him and really brought him to another level. So people, and then he would say Phil Jackson, and then he would say, he'd go on. And here's the greatest player of all time. So he wasn't just great by himself. He was a great player by himself. But what I'm saying is different people in Dean Smith, and they breathed into him and brought out the best in him. And he recognized that. So for all of us, any accomplishments any of us get in life, there was other people that were along the way that contributed that. And that's really the life of a coach right there.
A couple more of these scenarios before we wrap things up here. One of them is, you're talking about that, no gray area. Let's talk about, hard lines, or I guess you could call it maybe roadblocks, hard lines. You're going to put out the cones. You're not going that route, versus process, or let it play out. I think that's something that's a daily questioning in your head, whether it's direct or whether you're conscious of it or not. But what are some of the hard lines, and what are some of the things that you let them play out because it's part of the process?
Yeah, well, sometimes you got to let people be able to fail.
Yeah.
Because especially in the great game of baseball, because failure is all over the game of baseball. I mean, you can be the greatest hitter. We heard the adage a million times over. You fail 7 out of 10 times, you hit 300, you're in the Hall of Fame in the major leagues. So reality is, how do I deal with the failure that comes my way? Because it's going to come. And then how do I handle it? Well, part of how you handle it is how you do your daily business.
Yeah.
You do your basic, and that's part of the process. So the process is the fact that I do the fundamentals right for a long period of time. I have the disciplines of the hard work and then some, adding the extra degree, to my work ethic. 211, water's hot and it's flat, it's nothing. And 212, all of a sudden it starts bubbling and creates steam to move a locomotive. If you give enough water. With that being said, are you going to be the person who has that extra degree? So you train the work ethic, the drive, the passion, and you understand that there's going to be failure in the process. The failures either can make or break the person, because during the failures is where you grow. You don't grow on the mountaintop. When you get to the mountaintop, on the mountaintop, it's the failures, the valleys that we have that allow us through the process to be stronger and better later. And I think that's what I was describing with Michael Jordan. He had to go through the valleys of losing to the Pistons and getting beat up by them before he could realize 6 championships.
Yeah.
He needed that. He needed that because that made it more sweet for him. And it also brought the best out of him. And so for us as coaches, we got to understand, we got to love the player through the failures, because the failures are going to happen and they're going to cost us some games. But it's in those moments that person can really take it to another level if they can get their way through it.
Yep. And
we need to help guide their steps when we're in that process. And
I think you'll agree that there's nothing better than baseball that uses failure as a teacher in life. The last one of these dilemma, or dichotomy, I get questions, is fun versus work. And I'll give you a kind of a scenario on this. This is a question I ask every week, every episode. I call it the 12-year-old kid moment. You think back to when you were playing baseball at 12 years old, not a care in the world. All you just loved the stick and the ball, and there was nothing better than wanting to go out with your buddies and play baseball. This is a career for you. This is a mission. This is so much more than, as they call it, the kids game. But it is still fun. And what are some of those moments where you get to step away from the work side and think, wow, I am so glad I am doing what I'm doing?
Oh, well, when one is outside of the field is when you get the letters and the phone calls and when I was receiving that award, the Keiltiz Award, several of my former players and assistant coaches happened to be at the event, and we took a picture after. There were several that we missed because they didn't get to get over there. But nevertheless, having those guys there, oh my gosh. Come on. I mean, what can you say? What a moment. Tears in my eyes.
I saw that picture and I was living through you. I'm like, wow, how special is that?
The gratitude that you have for those moments. Fun in the moment is when you see your player get selected. Like, I watch my players. I've had 6 of them go in the first round, and those boys get selected in the draft, and knowing that their lives and their families' lives are changed forever. And to think that in some small way that you may have had a little bit of a part in that is just what fun. I mean, how good does that get when you see your team holding up a trophy at the end of the season, of which we've had the privilege of doing it both at Michigan and at Ball State a few times, and those kids being so happy. I mean, what a moment. Seeing a guy have a walk-off homer or a pitcher compete and then will themselves to victory, or see that player who started off really as the 39th player and that person ends up being the all-star in those moments. So there's so many moments that, man, I could write a book on the moments, just happy moments. And then I could write a book also on the challenging moments that happened. I probably should write a book between the two of them.
I'm buying.
It's an interesting dichotomy because you have to go through them both.
Mhm.
You have to go through the fire a bit to be able to get to the mountaintop.
Makes you
But
respect both of them, I think.
yeah, you got to respect both of them. And that's
Yeah.
why I always tell my guys, it's hard. Every time when you do win, you got to cherish it because it's hard. Everybody's trying to win.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to win. There ain't anybody who doesn't want to win. So every time when you do win a championship or you get accolades of some sort, you got to really step back and be a heart of gratitude because, there's a lot of other people that would like to be in that position at that moment.
Yep.
And it just so happens that you happen to be the person in that one. And you got to be thankful for it because it is really hard to do.
Yep.
It's really hard to do. My greatest fun is watching a team grow as a team.
Yeah.
Barring none. Bo Schembechler said this, the team. And for me, that resonates with me like no other. I have the boys read the book, The Hard Hat, because it's about being a great teammate. For me, it all starts with being a great teammate. I'm not into as much as we've celebrated all these individual accomplishments these young men have had throughout the programs I've had the privilege of coaching. For me, it's about the team accomplishments, the team. And for me, that's one of the greatest gifts we can give our players is to teach them to learn how to work as a team. Because when they go out in the real world and they work as a team, they're going to be gratified and they're going to move up in the company because teamwork does make the dream work. I really believe that. Yeah. And so that is at the core of what we teach and believe in. And when you see your team realize an accomplishment, that as a coach, you just stand back there and now that's good. Yeah. That's really good. I'm happy for those kids because they bought into the power of the team and they made it happen, and good for them and good for all of us. We get this beautiful moment because we're all a team.
That's what I'm kind of doing right now is just kind of sitting back and listening to all this and thinking, yeah, this is the quotes we're getting from this. I didn't know it's so much more than the quotes, but I mean, this is, if we put it all together, if we think about as we wrap things up, last question for you, and I appreciate your time. As we think about, some of the deep topics that we've talked about, stewardship of the game, team versus big picture, integrity, honesty, kind of putting that all together. If you think about the young coach, maybe it's the high school coach, or let's go even younger. Let's think about the 13-year-old rec ball coach. How conscious of this do they need to be? How intentional do they need to be about it? And what is the result of it? I know it's, that's really what we talked about for the last hour, but what do you say to the 13U rec ball coach, as much as the high school coach saying, you know what, if you're a leader of men, I don't care how old they are, where does the cleats hit the dirt on these things, these deep topics we're talking about?
You hit one of the greatest words that I use all the time, intentionality. So you as coaches, we need to be intentional to teach and look for teachable moments. Look for every moment you can. Now, we have an advantage now. And because of social media, there's some good of social media, there's some bad of social media. We all know that. But with that being said, there's a lot of good that you can find. So you have a lot of ways to motivate and teach through short videos. You could get a little snippet of you just watch something, you say, hey, that's a teachable moment. I can use that and then parlay that to my team. And then we go have practice. So I had a moment to share something special and I'm breathing into my group, whether I'm a 13-year-old coach, whether I'm a high school coach, whether I happen to be at the Division I level or any level, I have an opportunity to use that platform with that group of people to breathe in positive. And so I would encourage any of the coaches out there to really think about, is there a minute or two thing that I could use at the beginning or at the end of practice for teachable moments, and teach the game of life, because we're all need to be members contributing to make our world a better place. That's at the end of the day, that's truth. And we all should be holding that banner. And as coaches, we get a chance to actually have a platform to speak to young people, whether we're teaching men's sports or women's sports. We have to add value. And so, no, I really appreciate it. But I think you got to be intentional in your thought process to be able to look for those moments that could be teachable. And some of the moments may be tough moments in a something happened in a game, somebody's going through something for whatever reason. But we can use that as a moment to help the betterment of the group and that individual by when they overcome that moment. So in other words, you can say, hey, a past experience, Johnny, failed in this area. Like it didn't work out for Johnny during that, but he stayed the course, as you used earlier in your talk here. He stayed the course, persevered, and because of that, he's reaping this benefit now. When he could have quit. But
and that
again,
carries over to so much more.
Oh, but once they accomplished that, and they realized, oh my goodness, look at that. I made it through that storm, and it made me better at the end. But if I don't get through the storm, we'll never know what the ending could be, a positive ending, where I'm stronger. And I go back to that Michael Jordan, because I think Michael Jordan got stronger because he went through the adversity that he had to go through. And I think you can see that in sport all the time. You can see it in life. Somebody overcomes an illness or whatever, and now they're stronger for it. And then they can add value to other people because they experienced something and they made it through it. So when somebody else is dealing with that situation, they can speak to it and they could say, give them encouragement. That otherwise, had they not gone through that, they wouldn't be able to encourage that person that way. So to me, it's all about life's just a cycle of trying to add as much value to others as we can. And the older I get, the more seasoned I get, the more experiences that I've had, the more that I realize the impact of that.
Folks, I told Coach Maloney, I told our guests before we got started here offline that one of my big faults in being an interview host is that I get so caught up in the stories they tell that I forget the next question just because I'm buying what you're selling. And in this specific case, it's the coach, tell me if I'm summarizing this right. It's the stewardship of the time that you are giving these kids. And it's so much more as far as how it impacts the rest of their time in life. And, it's because of coaches like yourself who are coaching the big picture that baseball matters. Coach, I really appreciate your time, folks. We'll see you next week.